What does it truly mean to succeed? To achieve everything you possibly want and more? What does it do to you and your morals? What does it do to the people around you? What is the true meaning of achieving complete success in the fantasy of the American dream? These have been questions that humanity has been trying to answer for the past couple centuries. People have moved to America to reach their highest goals and dreams. It has been known as the land of opportunity, something that Hollywood has consistently explored as a theme in many films. Stories are constantly told both as dreams and cautionary tales of what it truly means to succeed. These types of stories of success usually blur the lines of a clear-cut protagonist and antagonist, a trend that has especially become popularized into the late 2010s. Characters have become morally gray, showing the complexities in humanity and thus given a more unique lens to nuanced topics like exploring success and obsession. But at the end of the day, even if you have a not-so-goody-good hero or evil villain, your story still needs to tell a narrative, and that includes a protagonist and an antagonist. Yes, protagonist isn't the same thing as hero, and antagonist isn't the same thing as villain. Essentially, modern Hollywood has explored these darker stories of protagonists trying to achieve success, obsessed with finding the answer, and there are 3 movies I find most fascinating, especially as they all come out in the same year of 2014, my favorite year in cinema. Those movies are Gone Girl, Nightcrawler, and Whiplash. In my video, we're going to explore these 3 movies, their similarities in themes and protagonists, how the protagonists fall into darkness, lean into society's asks, and commit immoral acts on their road to success. Today, we're going to explore the dark truth of what it means to achieve success in the American dream. So what do I mean these movies are similar? They're not exactly related. One is about a college drummer, one is about a sociopathic scavenger, and one is about a fucked up couple, a clueless husband and a manipulative wife. How do these 3 different settings all lend themselves to the idea of the American dream? See, these movies aren't related, but rather follow a very similar trajectory, ending with the protagonist giving into their darkness to gain their idea of success. I mean, let's start with Nightcrawler, which is the most obvious case of an immoral protagonist.
I will never ask you to do anything that I wouldn't do myself.
Jake Gyllenhaal stars as a man finding a passion in recording late-night crimes and violence and selling it to new studios. He starts as this lowly thief who just wants to find a steady career, but slowly develops into this obsessive and power-hungry business owner. Throughout the movie, he keeps going to worse and worse lengths, screwing over everyone he knows along the way. He starts making these dark decisions to further his career, from manipulating crime scenes to eventually simulating the crimes so he can record them. His obsession with success shapes all his decisions in the movie. He wants to achieve the idea of the American dream, where he is wealthy, influential, and famous. In the end, he gets there. He has his own successful business, with multiple vans and interns under him. He is ingratiated well into a major and influential organization, developing strong relationships with people there, and he even got away with all his dark actions. He is now seen in the public eye as this hard-working self-starter with no one knowing the crimes he's committed along the way, because no one really cares. He's given in to the darkness inside of him and achieved what he's always wanted, but at the cost of his morality and healthy relationships with others. Which brings us to another movie where the hero gives up everything to succeed, and that's Whiplash. Yet another 2014 movie, this time starring Miles Teller as this ambitious college student who wants to be the next Buddy Rich. He wants to be a drummer and is trying to move up the ranks of the most prestigious music university in the country. Unlike Nightcrawler though, where the hero is in control and constantly manipulating the situation to get to his level of success, this is a college student. He is still young and being influenced by others. In the case of Neiman, it's through his sadistic teacher, Terrence Fletcher. We'll get more into my absolute GOAT J.K. Simmons when we talk about how the protagonist's goals and outcome affects the other characters, but essentially, he is the mentor and antagonist to our protagonist of Miles Teller. Since Neiman wants to be the best musician, he needs the support and approval of the teacher that's trying to get him there. And we see that through the course of the movie that Fletcher starts to mold Neiman into this uber-driven musician, that it starts to amplify his most negative sides. His ambition goes up, sure, but with that comes his egotistical attitude. Like Nightcrawler's Louis Bloom, Neiman has a massive ego that lets his passion show and exceed. He has that drive to be successful, but it starts to turn unhealthy as that begins to dominate Neiman's life. He constantly drops everything to get the chance to make a mark as this amazing drummer. I mean, bro literally gets into a car crash before one of his performances and doesn't stop as he doesn't want to miss his shot. In the end, although he suffers some setbacks from his goals, we start to see that this is probably better for his mental health. But when he gets the chance to play again, once again under Fletcher, he takes that chance. And this time, he uses his incredible drumming skills to simulate his own performance and quote-unquote win. He achieves his level of success, but he lets some of his dark tendencies win out. The director has even said that this was supposed to be more of a tragic ending rather than triumphant. This is because Neiman does succeed in what he always wanted, being the best and having an amazing drumming solo, but he conformed to Fletcher's dark and twisted methods, upped his ego, and straight up let his body suffer. Public perception of him was that he always achieved fame and success in being one of the greats, with no one really seeing what cost him along the way. Which brings us to our last movie of the trio, Gone Girl.
You want to stay with her?
Unlike Nightcrawler and Whiplash, the idea of this movie being driven by an ambitious and egotistical man who wants success is a bit more hidden. Most of the movie focuses on the simple idea of a damaged wife framing her husband for murder, but if you look close enough, the movie is actually very layered and is really about a couple's miserable marriage, leading them to discover what it means to be happy and successful. It's a dark and twisted look into the American dream and being famous in the media. That is crucial to understand because it's one of, if not the main reason, why Ben Affleck's Nick Dunn stays with his murdering psychopathic wife at the end of the movie. See, what's interesting about this movie is that it really has two protagonists. You can kind of argue that Nick is more the hero and Amy is the villain, but it's a lot more complicated than that. This movie, more than Nightcrawler or Whiplash, really blurs the lines of our characters, how they conform to their dark tendencies, and how they eventually find success. So this is already a very well constructed and layered movie, with the first hour or so being told from the perspective of Nick as secrets of his lying and sick nature start to get revealed. He is introduced as our protagonist initially, yet there are so many things about him that are troubling. He has anger problems, shows no real emotions in big public settings, and is even found to be cheating on his supposed missing wife. When the twist comes that Amy is actually alive, we start to switch to her perspective and the reasoning behind her actions. Initially, she is seen as our antagonist, but as the movie goes on, it starts to switch focus between the two characters constantly and illuminate both of their problems and how they overcome them. With Nick, it's obvious. He's being set up for murder and needs to change people's thoughts on him so he doesn't go to prison. But with Amy, it's a bit different when you start to view her as the second protagonist of the movie. You see that she also has problems and flaws of her own. I always wondered why they had her getting robbed by those trashy white bozos halfway through the movie, but rewatching it recently, I see that David Fincher is also trying to have her be less of this villainous, unstoppable force and more of a complex character that is also a protagonist of her own story. Both Nick and Amy serve as our flawed protagonists, and in the third act of the film, Nick comes on national television, apologizes to his wife, and asks her to come home. So Amy, realizing the malleable and desperate person Nick really is, decides to oblige, crafting a completely new narrative of being kidnapped by Barney Stinson and then later killing him. Yeah, I guess Barney didn't follow his playbook too well. So Amy comes back to Nick, and they become the most famous couple in America, with an iconic story. Through these tragic and fucked up events, they end up achieving a whole lot of success. Success that Amy always wanted and Nick, deep down, also longed for. Through their fame, they gain wealth and influence, completely shifting their position in the world. Amy gets what she's always wanted, success as herself, while Nick decides to conform to her wants. There are a multitude of conflicting reasons why Nick decides to stay too, from pressure from the public, to keeping a strong relationship with their eventual child, to partly even loving the sadistic yet confident woman Amy embraced in herself. No matter the reason, Nick ends up gaining a lot in the end. He becomes loved by the public, wealthy, and influential, all while his mental suffers and his sister, his rock throughout the movie, is horrified by his decision, which leads to the next part of the actual consequences of the dark ambition of success. Not only does success trigger the protagonist to turn to darker and more immoral tendencies, but it also forces them to abandon their strongest and deep emotional connections with people who care about them. When the protagonist makes the decision to embrace ambition, they do it at the expense of a stable and caring environment. They leave behind, or rather step over, family members, significant others, and work colleagues, all to gain everything they could possibly want and grow to continue working towards even more. Those who care for them start to lose trust in their judgment, questioning what is really the most important to them. In the case of Gone Girl, Nick's decision to end up with Amy alludes to a rift with the person who truly cares for him the most, his sister, Margot.
I can't watch you play house with that thing for the next 18 years.
I can't just walk away.
Unlike Nick, Margot has no emotional attachment to Amy. In fact, she absolutely hates her guts. On top of that, although this isn't really discussed in the film, Margot is less ambitious and more risk-averse than Nick, so public perception and true American dream success isn't all that important to her, especially after being in the negative spotlight for the majority of the film by the media. Meanwhile, Nick is arguably more driven, moving to the city when he was younger and wishing to become a writer. So when Nick decides to stay with Amy and thrive off the success, she is obviously not going to be happy with this. She loves Nick and worries for him, but her trust in him has started to waver. With Amy, although she doesn't have someone as close as Margot is to Nick, her decision to thrive off the success of public perception and achieve true fame, she does so in isolating from true connections with others that aren't Nick, mainly her parents and Desi. Amy had always had a very rocky relationship with her parents, where they plagiarized her childhood, which ended up causing a lot of resentment. So when she starts to achieve success without them, I can guarantee she uses the opportunity to grow further from them and boost her public image via her influence and twisted relationship with Nick. And then there's Desi, the last person in the world who had any true care for her, that it became obsessive and problematic on its own. And we see how she took care of him. Yeah, YouTube won't let me show that. But yeah, both Amy and Nick start to turn away from those that love them to have the best success and life they want. A similar thing occurs with our other protagonist from Whiplash, Andrew Neiman.
You won't be able to give me the time of day because you have bigger things to pursue.
That's exactly my point.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
I think this is one of the most clear-cut ways of ambition driving away loved ones, as Andy's decision to become the best drummer has him push away his girlfriend, who doesn't share the same level of ambition as him, as well as his father, who just wants him to be mentally happy and safe. Let's talk to girlfriend Annie first. He straight up breaks up with her as he believes she will keep him from truly being the best in drumming. Essentially, he believes her to be a distraction, who doesn't seem to have the same levels of care for things as he does. Obviously, she's not going to take that well, and when he eventually loses it all near the end, he tries to go back to her, but she's moved on. How you do that to the amazing Supergirl, I don't know. With his father though, it's slightly different. His father doesn't really move on from him, rather it's Neiman's decision to embrace the full scale of his obsession that horrifies and tragically begins to worry his father. Neiman hates not achieving anything and not being pushed, and his father represents that. I think the dinner exchange around the midpoint of the movie truly showcases Neiman's psyche, where he would rather be remembered after living a life of suffering and isolation. And then there's Nightcrawler, with our most morally flexible protagonist who practically screws everyone over in the end.
I can't jeopardize my company's success to retain an untrustworthy employee.
Although obviously a villain based on the traits he exhibits right off the start, he is still the protagonist of our story, and because of that, he is actually written as an underdog, where the world and other characters become the antagonists. Characters like the news networks putting him down, or Bill Paxton serving as his rival, are seen as these opposing forces, making him more rootable. But as the film progresses, look at what our protagonist does as he follows his dark ambitions. He blackmails Rita into accepting his exact financial offers and even into sleeping with him. He attempts to do the same with his employee Rick. Not the sleeping part, the, financial offers part, and completely outclasses and ignores Bill Paxton until, of course, he becomes a threat. See, right when Lou starts to have his success challenged is when we fully see if he's the person to fully commit to anything and everything to gain that success. And clearly, he is. In so doing, comes at the expense of hurting those around him. Lou sabotages his rival until he gets into an accident, becoming the very thing he takes photos of, which is pretty sick and twisted. Meanwhile, once Rick becomes an antagonistic threat too, Lou indirectly kills him, leaving him behind too. There is no person Lou won't screw over to not get in trouble, and for those in his way, they can either run from him, be run over by him, or most interestingly, conform to him. Something that Rene Russo's Rita does, and something that these dark success-driven protagonists actually start to bring out in others. So if you can't beat them, join them. When the protagonist becomes ambitious to the point of obsession to achieve their goals, they become a runaway train, with one dream in mind. People are either run over, as we discussed, or must conform. Those who decide to stay end up conforming to the protagonist's means of dark and ambitious success. In a way, in each of these films, the antagonists lose out to our protagonist's darkness or conform in a way to the protagonist's dark means. The result ends up the same. The ambitious hero becomes the villain of their own story. And no movie encapsulates that better than Nightcrawler.
Jesus, you sound like Lou.
10 seconds to back.
I think Lou is inspiring all of us to reach a little higher.
Lou screws over both Joe and Rick on his quest to wealth and success, leaving them behind. But one person that actually conforms to Lou is Rita. She completely adheres to any price he asks for, and in exchange, she reaps the benefits. Her network skyrockets in popularity due to Lou's ambitions, making her famous and growing her success too. She falls into his morally compromised whims and molds around his obsessive success. In order to achieve success herself, she must turn a blind eye to the darkness of Lou. But in Gone Girl, it gets more interesting, as Nick is the one to conform to Amy.
We're gonna be parents.
Oh, my goodness.
She is both the protagonist and antagonist of the story, as we discussed before, and Nick is the one to not only get caught up in her lies and drive for success, but decides to conform to it himself. He recognizes that part of him loves the adoration and is attracted to this manipulative confidence. He can't resist but go along. So even though he's a protagonist himself, he falls into dark tactics to conform to darkness and gain success on his own. He realizes what it truly means to achieve the American dream. And in doing so, he ends up conforming his sister in a way to his new way of life with Amy. He reaps the rewards of success at the expense of his mental happiness. And finally, with Whiplash, our protagonist, Andrew Neiman, is the one to truly become the tragic villain of his own story on his path to success. In doing so, he shuts out his girlfriend and father, but the interesting one is Fletcher. After being the antagonistic force manipulating our protagonist throughout the movie, Andrew is the one to truly conform him to his path in the end in a cruel twist of fate. Fletcher's main goal was always to find a student that he could mold into a truly great musician. When Andrew realizes that he can become that musician in the end, he starts to realize that Fletcher has to follow in his whims now. The villain of the story becomes this enabling figure who rides off the success of Neiman, but also at the mercy of him. This shows that if you truly sacrifice everything on your way to success, it leads you to have influence over most anything and anyone you want in your life, including those who may even have hurt you in the past. But is that truly worth it? And is there really a price to pay?
The point is, ladies and gentlemen, that greed, for lack of a better word, is good.
Success is usually framed in a simple phrase: want something, work for it, get it. I mean, the idea of the American dream is if you work hard, you can achieve anything. However, it's much more complicated than that. Within that promise lies an unspoken truth. Success is individualized, competitive, and costly. And I don't mean costly on the money side, but on the morality side.
You got a book deal, Lifetime movie, you franchised the bar.
You may want to thank her.
Just don't piss her off.
These films of Whiplash, Gone Girl, and Nightcrawler have taught us there is a certain darkness to ambition, that to truly achieve what you want, you must do anything and everything to achieve it.
I can tell you from experience that the surest way up the ladder is to listen carefully. Follow my orders.
It becomes an obsessive game where winning is the only thing that matters. The goal replaces the self, the pursuit becomes the identity. Once this occurs, everything else in your life becomes expendable, from relationships to morals. When ambition becomes obsession, when you truly want to achieve more than anyone else, you start to test boundaries. You cut corners, you break rules, you find loopholes. Because if you don't, someone else will, and they will get ahead instead, and then you won't be the one remembered. You won't have influence, you won't have power. Morals become twisted, fluid, where the question then becomes not is this right, but can I justify this? Which brings in the one major theme that all these movies about success and ambition really show: the influence of public perception. We've grown into a culture where perception becomes reality. How you present yourself to the world, and thus what the world sees, defines who you really are. This especially has become the case with social media, as that is the only contact people may have with you. These movies show that if you craft a narrative to appear successful, then that's what people will really believe.
Die drunk, broke at 34 and have people at a dinner table talk about me, than live to be rich and sober at 90 and nobody remember who I was.
The influence of that perception will then cause people who really know more than that to have to restrain themselves or play around that boundary. This game towards success is zero-sum. These initial relationships around you become more than just people, but pawns on a chessboard. Friends can become competitors or obstacles against your success. Teammates can become threats. In this game, if you want to achieve success, you must either step over them, toss them aside, or use your power to mold them to what you want, conform them to your image. Success truly becomes about control. But when you do achieve all this and you look back, this begs the question, was it worth it? Do you feel you're a good person? Did you truly win?
My personal life is hanging by a thread, that's all.
No, join the club. That's what happens when you start doing well at work, darling. Let me know when your whole life goes up in smoke. It means it's time for a promotion.
You may say you quote-unquote won, but what does that mean? Maybe you got the last word in, maybe you proved the point, maybe you achieved what you wanted, but what did it cost you inside and out? When you reveal your darkness, your obsession, you lose the trust of those who truly cared for you. You lost authenticity and relationships, but another one is the loss of inner peace. True success isn't only about pure control, power, and perception. Everything has a cost, even ambitious and obsessive success. True success is a balance and alignment of your goals and wants with how you achieve them. You must ask yourself who you truly are. People forget to stay humble, appreciate the life they have and will have, and take the time for responsibility and reflection. Success means nothing if the price is your relationships, your humanity, and your self-respect. Winning isn't just reaching the top, but it's achieving things without losing yourself along the way. Thank you everyone, I hope you enjoyed my video about success and ambition. Please tell me your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think of these three movies? They are some of my favorites of all time. Gone Girl, Whiplash, and Nightcrawler are all incredible movies about success, but there are definitely a bunch out there. I mean, movies like Wolf of Wall Street exist, on top of many others that exist way past the 21st century. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you everyone, and have a good day. Bye.